In the earliest days of Philadelphia, they were the ones to take the heat.
They were community-based organizations. They were thinking about things probably for the good of the city.
As the colonial city became an industrial melting pot, they changed with it.
Small streets, pretty much everybody on top of one another. They ruled there, and anyone that came in had to deal with them.
For 2 centuries, Philadelphia's volunteer fire companies reflected the city at its best and at its worst. In January of 1667, William Penn returned from Ireland to find his city, London, devastated by fire. 15 years later, Penn and his chief surveyor, Thomas Home, resolved to create the first fireproof city in the British Empire.
Streets were to be wider than average, houses were to be built in the center of green plots. But early firefighting really relied on those bucket brigades, and in the event that fire broke out, you were at the very least expected to send your buckets along to the fire, and hopefully you were going along to help fight the fire as well.
Benjamin Franklin and his business associates saw the need for rapid response and organized the first volunteer fire company in Philadelphia. Other companies soon organized, and in the coming years, Philadelphians invented firefighting as we know it.
The first fire hydrant was invented in Philadelphia.
The city grew rapidly, and fire companies became a central focus of neighborhood life.
The most prominent citizens of Philadelphia all joined these companies. They all wanted to do public service, and it was like a duty for them. Eventually, it got more to the blue-collar guys, and some companies became very political.
There were no African-American fire companies. There was an effort in 1818 to establish one, and they were discouraged from forming.
By the mid-19th century, issues of slavery and abolition were tearing the city apart. In 1838, an angry mob surrounded Pennsylvania Hall, headquarters of the Pennsylvania Anti-Slavery Society.
Who set the fire? We don't know, and we'll probably never know. But when the fire companies arrived on the scene, water was played on surrounding buildings, and Pennsylvania Hall was allowed to burn.
In the outlying neighborhoods of Southwark, Northern Liberties, and Kensington, religious tensions simmered between Irish immigrants and native-born Protestants.
The firemen that would go out and light the fires in these churches just to draw the rivals to the location and start firing upon them or hit them with clubs and everything else. So it was really bad at one point.
Some fire companies joined forces with street gangs, with names like the Blood Tugs, the Bullies, the Killers. In South Philadelphia, William McMullen, a man they called the Squire, presided over the Monumenting Hose Company and a notorious street gang, and was the 4th Ward Democratic boss.
They were his political muscle. They had pitched battles with alley apples, which are bricks, brick bats, and actually firearms too. There wasn't much of a police force. And it was as easy as crossing South Street into Monumenting and Philadelphia police couldn't touch you.
In 1854, 13 townships, 6 boroughs, and 9 districts were consolidated with the original city as a way to unify police protection. Legislators appointed a chief engineer to restore order in the fire companies, but they remained independent neighborhood institutions.
There was a lot of fighting, but they also protected the city. Philadelphia never had catastrophic fires like New York or Boston or San Francisco or Baltimore, and it was thanks to these guys.
Firefighting was a dangerous job, and we have the names of 75 volunteer firefighters who died performing that job. And they were beloved by their various constituents.
Everybody used to sup together or have supper together at the firehouse. It was a big ceremony.
At the end of the Civil War, the fire companies threw a lavish, citywide parade.
Firefighters loved parades. It lasted from almost 9 a.m. in the morning to almost midnight. So this was an invitation for all the outlying companies to come in, and even from other states, as far as to come in and show your apparatus off.
They had their banquets and dinners and their parades. The first, of course, went all the way back to 1832, the 100th anniversary of the birth of Washington. And people really loved to turn out to see them. And you have all of the fabulous accoutrements that went with it. The elaborate uniforms, the silver trumpets, the silver torches.
Gradually, new steam engine technology rendered the old fire companies obsolete.
It took about 40 people to pump one of these 1840s style engines. The steam engine was a radical change.
Everybody wrote against the volunteer system. This is not working. These guys, all they want to do is party, and then they run around at night. You know, even there's no fire. People kind of got tired of the old system.
On the evening of March 14, 1871, gangs of firemen ran shouting through the streets, dragging fire engines, and carousing until dawn. The next day, the professional Philadelphia Fire Department started service, and more than 150 volunteer fire companies passed into history.
If you wanted anything done, you would go to the firehouse, a place of refuge, a source of a meal, where they would have a party and invite everybody from the community into the firehouse to have a pig roast or some type of supper.
For the next 40 years, Philadelphia's volunteer veterans associations hosted concerts, parties, reunion parades, and excursions. They kept marching into the early years of the 20th century. And then, one by one, they died, taking with them a turbulent and tangible connection to the history of the city.